Peace, boxing fans. Thanks for pressing play on another Bite Down Boxing video. I'm the host of the Bite Down Boxing podcast, R.L. Woodson, or just Wood. Look, we got a pretty good one coming up this weekend, actually tomorrow night, with super middleweights, Rogelio Uzcategui versus Caleb Plant for Uzcategui's IBF super middleweight title. It's a very interesting matchup, partially because, in my opinion, Caleb Plant is one of the last PBC guys, to kind of get this shot at entering world champion status. I guess Sir Marcus Brown is out there, who's coming up next week against Badu Jack in a very tough fight. I guess Jordanis Ugas is out there, who will be getting his shot against Sean Porter in the next few months. But yeah, Plant is kind of like one of the last guys left in the queue who's getting a shot at a world title, and it's in a tough one against a fighter that some have considered the boogeyman. That's what Plant referred to Uzcategui as. If we go back maybe a year and a half ago, super middleweight looked a lot different than it does right now. So it seems like it's an opening. But like I said, Uzcategui at 28 years old, his record is 28-2 with 23 knockouts. Plant is 26 years old, he's 17-0 with 10 knockouts. Not a lot of difference here in the tail of the tape. The only thing is the 2-year difference, and then Uzcategui, obviously with the 11 more fights or 13 more fights, and losing twice. But Uzcategui has a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Also, Uzcategui has been down in a fight before. We'll get to that in just a second. But the fight goes down at Los Angeles. I hate when that ends with that S. But at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles, California. This Sunday, tomorrow night that is, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also on that card is Brandon Figueroa versus Moises Flores in 12 rounds of super bantamweight action. And then rising or promising prospect Joey Spencer versus Brandon Harder in a super welterweight 4-rounder. Starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. In the prelim show is the return of former pound-for-pound champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Giovanni Delgado. This will be Rigondeaux's return to boxing after the disappointing outing versus Vasily Lomachenko. So let's get into this main event, Rogelio Uzcategui and Caleb Plant. The buildup has been fairly decent. They did an all-access style PBC show that I caught bits and pieces of, that included a face-to-face sit-down conversation. The animosity is definitely here between these two. They also went and showed some behind-the-scenes activity, day-to-day activity for camp preparation for the respective camps, and they've made some strides to make sure that when we tune into these fights, whether it be a Saturday night or a Sunday in this situation, that when we tune in, we're not meeting these guys for the first time. If you've listened to the Bite Down Boxing podcast, and even previously on the Pay Me No Mind podcast, I've said that I've lobbied for that for 2 years, that it's obvious that the UFC has its studio shows that help familiarize people with the fighters. Why can't we do that for boxing? Why can't somebody that's involved with boxing take that step? So part of this this 4-year deal, I guess, with Fox, part of that, or one component of that, was shoulder programming. So the studio show, and then these PBC countdown. Like I said, right now I'm totally off of cable, and I gotta watch stuff with different or via different means, and I really am struggling to kind of figure out how to see everything. But I did just see the Keith Thurman and Josecito Lopez show on regular Fox just before I started recording that, so that's a good development. Where am I here time wise? Okay. Oh, okay. So let's get to it, man. Like I said, these two have been firing shots on social media, and I will say this is one thing, I've mentioned on previous Bite Down Boxing podcasts. Caleb Plant is one of the few, along with the Charlo brothers, one of the few PBC guys who's actually actively calling out the people that he wants to face and take down. I've actually Caleb Plant is a friend of the show. He's been on the program before. Tried to get him in on this one around the time when the hand injury happened, and we just weren't able to reconnect. But I guess in this matchup right here, my major question with Plant is, how does his pace, output, and power translate to the world-class level? And two examples of this, because I don't really have a clear winner in this fight. I'm rooting for Caleb Plant, but Uzcategui is not a guy that I dislike, for any particular reason. So I go back and I look, and you hate to rely on the triangle theory or triangulation, but this is one of those instances with all the circumstances surrounding the matchup. We really don't have much else to go on because Plant is just now getting to this level. But I look back, and two things that jump out to me for the three items that I mentioned: his pace, output, and power. There was a 10-round decision unanimously won by Plant versus Ghanaian fighter Thomas Awembono back in February of 2017. And Plant, swept the cards, but then a year later, super middleweight Jesse Hart out of Philadelphia blows out Awembono with the first round knockout. And we never looked at Hart as, a power puncher. Second example, February of 2018, Plant defeats Rogelio Medina in 12 round. I believe it was a 12-rounder by unanimous decision. Wide decision on that one as well, as Medina was hobbled that night, looked like he had some kind of leg injury. But this is several months, 7 or 8 months after David Benavidez had the highlight reel TKO or 8th round TKO of Medina, which was in May of 2017. And so, like I said, I look at the judicious punching output of Caleb Plant. And when you look at Zurdo Ramirez, when you look at David Benavidez, who's a fantastic offensive fighter, when you look at a Uzcategui who had the great success against Andre Dirrell in their 2 fights, especially in that second fight, you just wonder what Caleb Plant is going to do against, the heavier punches and the volume of the punches. In comparison, Uzcategui's 2 losses are the disqualification against Andre Dirrell in a fight that was kind of back and forth a year and a half or so ago in at MGM Grand or MGM National Harbor. I had the opportunity to check that one out in person. But there's the disqualification for the late punch that ended that fight. And then in 2014, a wide decision loss to Matt Korobov for the intercontinental version of the WBO title. In that fight, Uzcategui was down twice in the 7th round of that bout. At the crux of this fight is the question of how Plant's defensive prowess and prudent punching output stands up to Uzcategui's pressure and power. Uzcategui feints quite a bit, and sometimes he pops his jab or works his power off of some irky-jerky movement, you know, and an awkward rhythm that he sometimes gets into. I didn't see it a whole lot in the second Dirrell fight, but I definitely saw it. It was caught my eye in the first fight. And I don't know, you know, if Dirrell was just coming off of a layoff himself, maybe he was struggling with that activity or that movement a little bit in their fight, but it allowed Uzcategui to get off to a great start in that fight. So, you know, again, Plant is going to use footwork a lot for his defense, managing, you know, finding a safe range where he can sit at. In light of the 2.5 inch reach advantage for Uzcategui. And he's not going to rely so much solely on just upper body movement and reflexes, which is kind of, you know, what and timing that Andre Dirrell was using. He's a younger fighter, less wear and tear, so he'll be using his feet a little bit more to kind of offset what Uzcategui wants to do offensively. So that's kind of where it is. Like I said, I don't have a winner because I don't know the answer to that question. One thing is Uzcategui, like a couple of the other PBC guys who we like to see more active. One thing that's kind of a drawback for Plant is the fact that he's been relegated to talking. Now his was injury related, whereas we don't know why Tank Davis hasn't fought quite as much. You know, Brown has had some personal issues. Marcus Brown. It's a couple of these guys who haven't fought as much as we would like them to have, or moving along in the manner that we would like them to have been moved along. But Gervonta Davis definitely is a guy who just hasn't been in the ring a whole lot. And like I said, he's been stuck on in social media doing a lot of his sparring, and you know, that's where he's been busiest, unfortunately. And like I said, here in Caleb Plant's situation, like I said, injury related, and then not being able to get the fight. Obviously, Zurdo Ramirez is across the street, Jesse Hart is across the street. Benavidez had his drug-related issue where he was sat down for a couple of months. And, you know, Uzcategui had to work through the disqualification and the rematch. And then he had a stay busy fight maybe 4 months ago or something. So we are where we are. And like I said, Plant is a guy who seems to be motivated by, you know, wanting to show that he's one of the best in the world and that he's world class. But then he's also a guy who talks about the challenges in his life and the things, the misfortune, you know, that he's had, especially that being with his daughter, Aaliyah. So we've heard about all of this stuff ad nauseum. No disrespect to any of, you know, his trials and tribulations. But Sunday, tomorrow night, we're going to see if all of that stuff is just talk, or if he's going to get in the ring and actually realize the potential that he's been telling all of us that he's had the last couple of years. So that's where it's at. I'm definitely excited about it and looking forward to it. So again, if you like any of these different kinds of videos that I'm doing on here and giving a shot, please always hit that like button for me. If you don't like it, you know, feel free to do what you must do, or you feel compelled to do. Please subscribe to the channel. Come back and check in with me on future coverage of boxing. And, you know, share these links sometimes if you have other fight friends and whatnot. I'd appreciate that 3,000%. Hey, it's a new year. new boxing calendar. We already had last night's Devin Haney big win. Check out the video I just did on that. And like I said, tomorrow night, this kind of kicks off the contender level and above action for the year. Next week we have the big pay-per-view fight. I'll leave that at that for right now. And thanks for checking in with me. Peace.